our special ed director, Justine Melendez, and Anna Foster, one of our administrative assistants in special education, organized an All Abilities play date at Bolero, which was just such a fun thing.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was just making sure our life we got connected. Sorry.
Yes. So nice work. So anyway, it was so fun to drop by and see so many families smiling. And I really just want to recognize Justine and Anna for all the work that they put into such a fun event. So thank you for doing that. And I'm sorry I missed that last time. I was out for Lunar New Year in Mrs. Faulkner's class out at Pioneer Elementary and saw this great art docent lesson that was on dragons. And just once again, want to thank all the parents who put in so much energy into our art docent program and give kids all these opportunities. On February 22nd, Loma Vista invited out a West African dance company to perform an assembly. And it was just a wonderful way to get kids involved in participating in dances and using musical instruments. So great for them. Loma Vista also had a Gold Dust or Bust musical as part of their California history learning in 4th grade. So some good costumes there going forward. And then Ron Nunn had a great college and career week at that same time. And they also had, you can see kind of the middle picture's a little bit small there, but maybe what you can't see is there's a panel of adults that are there that are talking about their careers and sharing what they do with the students there. So I thought that was a great twist on that. And then students dressed up for what they wanted to be as they grow up. You'll see an agenda item later on that talks about our draft goals going forward. But these were the groups that came out that volunteered to be part of our Strategic Action Planning Committee on the 22nd for a second consecutive Thursday afternoon for looking at those draft goals and giving recommendations. And you'll see some revisions to that as we go forward. And thank you to Twee for being the board representative for that. This was a phenomenal night on February 22nd. The Pioneer Elementary held its second Black History Month Oratorical Festival, but this time they invited out Ron Nunn Elementary to be part of that too. And it was just such a wonderful, inspiring evening. So I just want to continue to thank the Pioneer Parents Club for leading that event and just putting together such a phenomenal event. And you can see down at the bottom all the kids that participated in that. So really just a great job. Glow Social at Adams Middle School, right? It's a good thing to keep our middle school students busy and engaged in something positive. So thank you to everybody who put this on and spent a Friday night there. And then in this very room on February 26th, Daniel Dobbin and the second employee, Uma Steinhauer, came out and hosted families from Isaac R. Montañez Elementary and invited them in, talked about what the school was going to look like, showed some pictures. And so congratulations to them on getting off to a good start. Special Olympics was hosted on February 27th out at Adams Middle School. Over 33 classrooms in our area came out. And so just such a special event. And I think Stephanie and Emil, you came with me last year when they had it out at Adams, and you can see it was a little sunnier than the day that we were out. So they got to be outside too. So what a great opportunity for them. I want to congratulate our February special education staff of the month. So Gary Ann Schmidt from Edna Hill. You'll see Chrissy Crine there in the middle from Ron Nunn, and then Abby Duarte from Garin. And just thank you for these special educators that do so much for our schools. And thank you to our special ed department and Justine for continuing to honor these great people. I was able to go out on February 29th to see a 3rd grade history of Dr. Seuss musical out at Loma Vista. If you've never seen it, it's a musical that was written by actually the staff there several years ago, and it's really super informative and super fun. So I really had a great time watching that. If you know me, you know that I love BattleBots, and so where robots are fighting each other. So this was Mrs. Jenkins out at Edna Hill Middle School, leading a little BattleBots competition. And so if you see the one with the 49er flag there, you'll know it did well in the beginning. It just kind of faded at the end. So sorry, I had to take one shot. All right, so it's fitting on Leap Day that 200 frogs got loose at Garin Elementary. the loose frogs out there, Mrs. Martin. And so students were looking around and staff were looking around to win prize for that. So fun thing for a leap year. And I want to thank Stephanie Williams-Rogers for volunteering to go out and read to some of our first graders. Here she is at Guerin and Brentwood Elementary for Read Across America. I know people love having people come out and read stories to them. Also, lots of science work going on with our new science program. So here's some fifth graders in Miss Moreno's class out at Marsh Creek Elementary, checking their hypothesis about how plants grow in dark versus light. So you can see that going on. We had some special visitors out at Ron Nunn. Ron Nunn was out there visiting with students and going to classes and brought along Dewey DeMartini. So two longtime Brentwood residents and speaking to some of the history of what took place there. So thank you to Mr. Casey for organizing that and having them come out. I also wanted to take a second to acknowledge this. It's not the best picture, but Mrs. Simpson, who's a sixth grade teacher out at Edna Hill Middle School, has been doing this for a long time, and she works with the fish and game department to sort of help hatch trout, and then after March break, they take them out and they put them actually after their fry into the reservoir. And so it's a really great project, but you'll see later that Mrs. Simpson is one of the teachers that's retiring this year. But what's so great about it is I've gone around year after year, she's been able to spread it to other classrooms. So there's other schools that are taking advantage of this. So I just wanted to thank her for bringing that out. And then today I had the wonderful opportunity to go out and see some third graders at Mary Casey Black put on an American Symbols on Parade assembly, and it was super fun, and they did a fantastic job. So congratulations to them. And then I also want to end my little piece. 2 weeks ago when we did our presentation, I shared with you our employees of the year from each of the sites, both classified and certificated. So what I'm sharing with you now are our district employees of the year. So Yolia Alvarez, who's the Secretary 2 at Edna Hill, was one of our classified employees of the year for the whole district. Patty Barbosa, who's our wonderful counselor out at Mary Casey Black, was our certificated employee of the year for the whole district. And then Cecily Melendez, who's our food service lead. I put Adams out there, and so she is our middle school lead out at that place and does a wonderful job. She's at Bristow, right? She was Bristow. I realized that as I was like, I put Adams out there, but she's at Bristow. So I pasted the wrong icon. So Cecily's our wonderful lead. And if you've ever been to Bristow, it's our largest school, and they probably have our smallest serving area. And so Cecily leads that and does a great job. So I just want to congratulate them, and I'll update the picture to make sure it has the right thing. Sorry, Anna, out there. And then Saturday, I want to compliment Human Resources, who's they've organized a local job fair that we're hosting at Edna Hill. So feel free to come out. It's in one of our goals of trying to diversify our staff. We're recognizing the need to be more local in our targeting of future employees. And so Emily Cooper in HR under the leadership of Mr. Calabrese is putting this on, and all these other school districts are coming as well. But we're hopeful to see some great candidates. So thank you to HR for doing that. And that is my report.
Thank you. Next, we have public comments.
Move that we open public comment.
Second.
Yes. You can do it after.
Let's do it after.
We have to.
But hold on just a second. They need to vote on it. And then we'll call it.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right.
Hi, I'm Katie Bartlett. I teach at Adam. Good evening, board. I'm here to speak to you about professionalism. Ours. We here in this room represent some of the best and brightest moments in our town. We have to speak for the needs of all, from the TKer who can't speak and the needs of the mental health needs of an eighth grader who gets no love at home, from the gifted and talented to the homeless. If we here in this room cannot hold ourselves to a level of professionalism that supports all students, then what hope does this district have? Last week, I emailed the board my concerns, and Stephanie Williams-Rogers refused to engage in a professional conversation with me. We are all public figures, but when we ignore each other and refuse to engage in a back and forth conversation, we end up getting nowhere. I asked the board to agree upon rules of etiquette when they are asked to engage in discussions, especially when we are on different sides of the fence. If the community sees that we all work together, then they will be encouraged to work with us and not against us. If we show that all means all, especially when there's differences, then all feel heard, all feel understood, and all feel supported. It starts with us, the district, the teachers, the board, all working together, bringing the force that moves all students forward.
Are there any other public comments, cards?
Move that we close public comment?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. And consent items, the superintendent.
Yeah, if it's okay with the board, I just want to call out item, the personnel report. It was this 8-1. And I just want to recognize this is the time of the year when sometimes we have some very long-serving members of our staff retiring, and I just wanted to call out some really dedicated educators that are on the list tonight. So you'll see Robin Bird, who's a psychologist with us. She's been a psychologist with us and then was with Oakley District before. Susie Piccioni, who's a wonderful science teacher out at Bristow. Donna Mendez, who teaches out at Adams. Joni Friedman at Pioneer. Kim Snodgrass out at Ron Nunn School, Kathy Simpson, who we talked about earlier at Edna Hill, and then Mary Vassal, who's an office aide at Bristow. I just want to recognize them and thank them for their contributions to our school district for the many years that they've been here. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
I move that there's no further discussion or items to be pulled, that we accept the consent items 8.0 through 8.11.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. There were no hearings and appeals. And let's see, 10, report out of closed session. 10.1, expulsion of student 11-2023-08.
I move that we approve the stipulated expulsion of student number 11-2023-08.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. Next, 10.2, expulsion of student 02-2024-17.
I'll make a motion to approve the expulsion of student number 02-2024-17.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Next, 10.3, approval of second interim report.
Hold on, we're having a
Do we need to pause?
casting issue.
Okay.
That's what I have. You know what, we go on to 10.4 if that'd be okay, and then we can come back to 10.3 if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, next item is 10.4, board update and feedback on LCAP progress and process.
Yeah, so board, you've been seeing this item for a while, and as I alluded to earlier, we had our strategic action planning process, which takes all the information from surveys and committees, and then we bring in parents, community members, staff members, and they work together on looking at draft goals for next year. And so what you have in front of you are the draft goals and then also a timeline. So, and the draft goals are in the format of how we set the board priority goals last time. And so I think the district has been super appreciative of the simplicity of that and how targeted it is. And so it's something that we'd like to continue. So what we typically do at our next step is we show them to you here, and then we send them out to our larger community for more feedback to come back. So they'll go to our different groups in the community. They'll go to school site council, to our associations, to our parent leaders, to our district English learner advisor committees and other groups. You'll come back, we'll get feedback, there'll be more revisions, and then it'll come back to you ultimately as part of the June goal setting and budget process as we go forward. And so.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is there anything that we could call out that might be new or different from last year's goals?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So one of the things that you'll see is that instead of the six goals, right, we've broken them down into those 4 areas. So you'll still see the same first heading, which is implement best practices in all classrooms. But you'll see improved student attendance across all districts. But the number 3 one, instead of calling out behaviors, what we talked about is the need to promote culture that supports learning, right? It's larger than just behaviors. It's part of our goal is to have really positive school cultures everywhere, because the behaviors will be something that follows that as we go forward is that. And then also I think you'll see a big switch in the last one, which is the prioritize and implement district equity plan, right? So when we were looking at that one before, it was about having an equity plan. Now we're actually talking about taking some of those action items that were suggested in that recommendation and implementing them. So you'll see those called out. And I think the other small change is you'll see that color is purple rather than red, because I was told red was an angry color.
Okay.
So
Well, red is my favorite color.
it is also my favorite color. So thank you. But purple's nice too.
Great. Well, thank you for pointing that out
Absolutely.
for folks. Thank you.
Sure.
Should we go to 10.3, approval of second interim report?
Yes, good evening. Good evening. Tonight, we're bringing to the board the second interim report for the 23-24 fiscal year. This is part of the budget certification cycle that comes to the board. So second interim is the period starting July 1st when our fiscal year starts, and it goes through the period of January 31st of 2024. And just where we are in our annual budget cycle is we are at second interim. Following this, the district closes the budget after June 30th, and we'll come back in the fall with the audit. So taking a look at second interim, what does that mean? What it means is we now have 7 months of financial data to base our estimates and projections of expenditures and revenues. So at second interim, we're really analyzing and adjusting revenues, expenditures, and taking a look at mid-year payroll. What we start to do is begin projecting what we call the year-end balances for all our funds, because that will be the beginning balance for the next fiscal year's 24-25 budgets. We really want to tighten them. You don't know what all expenditures are going to be, but to some degree, you now have the monthly data and you can, calculate that out. I think the biggest change for all districts with second interim is part of our budget certification process is the multi-year projections, in that you're actually certifying this fiscal year and the 2 following years. And we will get to that more in detail, but the governor released his 24-25 proposed budget in January, and it really talked about a deteriorating budget condition for the state, which affects K through 12 education, and a very low COLA of less than 1%. which I will go into more. It's always important to remember that our district, Brentwood Union, we spend 89% of our salary and benefits on 89% of our costs are salary and benefits, and it's significantly higher than other districts. And that also Brentwood is one of the lowest funded districts for LCFF revenue in the state. So what we're doing here is actually looking forward to July 1st of next year. And as we've talked about, so the local control funding formula, LCFF, is the majority of the funding we get for our budgets to operate the schools and educate our students. And every student, every district in the state of California starts with the same base grant amount, based on sort of a grade span, as you can see. So like TK through 3, 4 through 6. So every district for TK through 3 gets 9, would be for this next year. This year they're getting $9,919 per student. And then the issue is with a 0.76% COLA is that would add, $75 per student to our funding for next year. Well, that's not going to even cover the cost of goods and services. And the other thing I want to show you, just kind of talking about what is the COLA is actually a federal calculation based on the cost of goods and services over 8 data points. And historically, I think the governor really did talk about how the last few years we've had very high COLAs. They were unusual. But the thing is, say between 2011, 2012 to now, the average might have been 3%. Some years were 1%, 0.85, some were 3 and above. But at a 0.76 COLA, it's not only less than the historical average, it's significantly less than what we've seen with the last 2 years. So we always take a look at our revenues first, and we have unrestricted and restricted revenues. So the unrestricted is the majority of Fund 1, the general operating budget. Now, again, it's highly restrictive in the sense we're spending it on salaries, benefits, cost of goods and services, and we follow education code and state law as a school district budget. But it's not siloed into something as specific as, say, Title I or intervention money. So looking from first interim to second interim, the good news is our revenues did go up by 1.5 million. Our local control funding formula went up by 1.1 million, and that is due to our increase in average daily attendance since we started school. So at first interim and really from the start of school, we were looking at a 93.55% average daily attendance, because again, we are funded based on students in the seat every day, an average over the course of the year, not in how many are enrolled. And it has gone up. As of the beginning of January, we were certified, but it's not a full certification. But we were able to say that, yes, it's gone up to 94.34%. So every time it goes up a little bit, if it goes up a whole percent or so, it's about $1 million in more revenue. The other revenues were other local revenue, and most of this was actually what we call E-rate revenue. So every year, the good news is we get money if we apply through funds, and we go through a long process for internet and telecommunication costs. And then every year we get some back through E-rate. And we also got some insurance reimbursements. Taking a look at the restricted revenues, they really only changed, they changed $500,000, 505,000 in local, but these are very targeted funds. It's still very good, like student body at sites, the funds increased. We got money from Turkey Trot. We had a county grant and local donations. So from first to second interim, there was a change. And then we always take a look at the combined. And again, it's really the unrestricted revenue went up by 1.5 million and the restricted by about 500,000. Going to the expenditures, again, remember that, the 89% of our unrestricted costs are salaries and benefits. And what we're doing, again, in second interim is looking at the change from first to second interim. It's based on actuals, and then also the budget we're projecting what we need through the end of the year. So again, on certificated salaries, it went up slightly, and this really had to do with certificated substitutes and extra compensation costs for teachers working extra. I think classified salaries, and if you want, I can go to the next slide. But so classified salaries went up 228,000. And that had to do in part a lot with substitutes. Again, we're very lucky that we have mostly in district, we have district employees. Most of our positions are filled except some instructional assistants, but there is a cost for, when people are off. We have the substitute costs. Books and supplies, I can go backwards again. It's 144,000. And really that has to do with just an increase in school site supply costs, some warehouse costs. The place where services and operating expenditures from first to second interim, that went up by a little over $900,000. And so those again, operating expenditures are like utilities, insurance, and then all our services, like transportation is a service. So, and we do gen ed transportation and special ed transportation. So our transportation costs went up $245,000 between first and second interim. So that's part of like the 900,000. Technology went up 227,000. Utilities went up. Legal settlements and agreements went up over 100,000, and then insurance and business contracts went up as an example of 129,000. But added up, that's a little over $900,000. Again, so your total unrestricted expenditures went up by 1.469 million. On the restricted side, again, we found some of the same increases were really classified salaries. And they went up, so classified salaries went up $461,000. And that was from increase in instructional assistance for our students in the special education programs for the student and program needs, and also substitute costs. Employee benefits went up because that's in relation to your salaries going up. Books and supplies, that was maintenance, mostly maintenance and operations supplies and some special ed supplies. And then looking at services and operating expenditures, so there was an increase you can see of 1.338 million. And then looking at the bottom of this slide on the detail outlines where those costs went, because we added some of our students in our special education programs went on to some non-public school placements. We had more needs for non-public agencies for special education, and we had settlement and legal costs, which came out to about 889,000 increase in that budget. Maintenance operation budget increased over 300,000, and our ELOP, as expanded learning opportunity program, we did increase the expenditures on that side, but that's also due to student participation. That makes, so if you look back though, the restricted expenditures went up $2.2 million. And when combining that, second interim, our total expenditures are over 137 million. An increase combined of 3.6 million. And as you can see, it's broken down by unrestricted and restricted. Then we take a look at the ending fund balance and the changes. So if you take a look at second interim, our total revenues are 132,862,000, and then our total expenditures are 137,492,000. And so we have a net increase, or what is called a decrease in our fund balance by 4.6 million. So our ending fund balance is $15,087,406. And then we always take a look at the ending fund balance basis on unrestricted and restricted. Again, the unrestricted ending fund balance is what our reserve is based on, and we'll see that in other slides. This is a school services slide. I've added some school services slides for this presentation, and I think this is really important to remember that we talk about MYP, multi-year projections. Well, what they're not, the thumbs down, they're not a prediction and they're not a forecast, they're not a crystal ball. They really are a result of mathematical calculations based on economic assumptions today, decisions that have already been made, and locally calculated data points. So decisions that have already been made is that we're basing it on the governor's proposed budget from January. That will change, but for this MYP, that is what we're basing it on. Our local data points are our ADA, our enrollment. So then we always want to look at what are the assumptions based on our multi-year projections. So again, on the very top in the red highlighted with the arrow, it shows that now we're at 0.7% COLA in 24-25. If you were looking at first interim MYP, it would say 3.94%. Then I did in green, though, I did say our average daily attendance, as I said, it went up. It went up to 94.34%. And then below that, there are a series of assumptions of what incorporates our costs for the year.
Can I jump in?
Yes,
real
of
quick
course,
on that, Diane?
please.
Sorry, I don't mean to
No,
interrupt
I
you.
could take a breather.
But one of the things that I want to point out to the board and everybody that's so important and doesn't get talked a lot about is that, so remember, even though we got increases on the backside, we're getting decreased because our ADA isn't as high. So when you look at that number and say 94.34, we went up, you should know that traditionally we'd be looking at about pre-COVID, we were at about 97% or higher. So you're talking there about $3 million a year. So nothing changes as a result of our expenses because of that. But our income is deficited by the state almost $3 million a year simply because students aren't coming to school as frequently as they did pre-pandemic. And so that's a really important part to remember when we go forward. And we're probably incurring more expenses to try to set up programs to get them to school. So sorry, I just wanted to interrupt and say that.
Thank you. That's very valid. Yeah. So but rather than just going line by line, you've seen this slide before, I'm actually going to pull out a couple things. Again, these were from school services at their governor's budget workshop for January. But it's always good to understand that what we call employer pension costs are required costs by every district in the state. We can't negotiate what that's going to be. So for our teachers, they belong to CalSTRS, and all districts are required to pay 19.1% on top of their salary for the CalSTRS employer contribution. And it's hard to see, it's small, but this year we're budgeted at 10.9 million or 8% of our total expenditures for CalSTRS. And then CalPERS is this classified employee retirement plan. And CalPERS continues to go up at a very high rate. We're paying 26.68% on top of us every classified salary, besides the other costs. And right now we're budgeted at 4.7 million for this year, or 3.42% of our expenditures. And this is one of the big challenges for all school districts, because the state doesn't give you extra money for this. It's supposed to come from the increase in base grant funding. So multi-year projections. So now we're looking, the board will certify that we can meet our multi-year projections, our fiscal, what we project in the out years, and as well as certify that we have at least a minimum of 3% requirement for economic uncertainty. And 3% is not even 1 month's payroll. It's just the minimum requirement by the state to certify a budget. again, we really went through these numbers already for the 23-24 year in terms of the combined ending fund balance at 15 million. And then the midline shows the restricted ending fund balance of 7.4 million and the unrestricted ending fund balance of 7.6 million. And what we always want to remember is that of the 7.6 million, we have 3% reserve for economic uncertainties. That's automatic. We need, so that's a 4.1 million. The board has adopted a reserve for economic uncertainty plan of 1.25% on top of that, which is 1.7 million. And then beyond that, out of the 7.6 million for this right now, this fiscal year, we have almost 694,000 of, they're called unrestricted funds, but they're sitting there for LCAP and site costs and lottery of 636,000 and then unassigned of 423,000. The most, critical pieces of this is that, our unrestricted ending fund balance is 5.53%. Which is not much above 4.25%. In looking at between now, so say February 1st, it's March now, but from second interim to close, like I said, we budget what we think, payroll is a good tight number, benefits, we're not adding a lot of people. But like I said before, like with maintenance and operations, we're very careful and selective. We want to make sure all the safety issues are taken care of, all the things that are priorities, but we have to watch that we don't have to contribute more to that and take away from our ending fund balance than we can do. You will have unexpected expenditures now, more settlements, more aids and things, but it's not much a wiggle room, as you might say. I think the most prevalent piece, though, is the 24-25 ending fund balance and the 25-26. They're both like a little below 4.5%. Now, that is enough to certify a budget. But again, that has to do with the governor's January budget because that was part of second interim. So we originally were going to get, prior to the governor's budget, the COLA looked to be almost 4% for next year. It was 3.94%. And now it's less than 1%. As it stands today, it could change. It could go lower. And that is why the outcomes and the ending fund balance are so much lower. Again, the multi-year assumptions assume that we're still increasing enrollment, which we are, and we're projecting a slight increase in ADA, but it compounds as a matter of fact, I'm just going to jump forward. If you look at the fourth bullet, I'll just say, because of the COLA changes, we're estimated to be 2.3 million reduction in LCFF revenue. And then the following year in 25-26, it could be up to 4.9 million. Hopefully our ADA will go up, but that is why it's changed so much from first interim. And then we always want to share our ending fund balances, and they're all positive with our other funds. And again, it's important to remember, so if you take a look at like Fund 13, which is the cafeteria or food services fund, or Fund 21, the bond fund, those cannot be shared monies between any other fund. They can't be used for general fund or general operating expenditures. They're specific statutory and ed code language. So building, which is good because the bond fund money can only be used for what's on our bond language for building. And capital facilities funds is developer fees, 6.7 million. That has to do just with a growth enrollment. So taking a look at our budget outlook between now and June, when the adopted budget happens, as you've heard, the state is estimating a significant budget shortfall, and revenues are down in January. They're not looking any better. In February, we've had this significant reduction in COLA as far as a proposed budget for next year. And our ending fund balances are lower than they have been at first interim, significantly. And then I wanted to, That's funny. It didn't come out, the slide. Oh, you have to, oh, it's on a, okay. Yeah, it's a fancy one. So I didn't know I loaded it that way. So not to confuse you, there's this ADA that says at the bottom, kind of says 10,000. This is not our district. This is a school services slide. And it was showing how your revenues changed as you lose students. But the reason I shared it is if you take a look at the green dots, that is basically looking at what we thought revenues would be at first interim, and looking at the red, how much the state, projected revenues are changing in a very short time. And then again, this is from school services, but it's really about the general fund condition of the state revenues. That's how education is funded. And right now there's volatility and there's vulnerabilities in the state revenue, and this poses the risks for education funding, which you've heard. So kind of to finish up, we've talked about ADA, which is positive. It's also really good for students because, of course, we want our students to come to school. I think what we wanted to share is that we're in uncharted territory right now. The state is facing a serious budget problem, and that these large operating deficits at the state are anticipated over the next several years, which in turn affects our budget and every school district budget. One-time funds are mostly used up. Our one-time funds remaining will fund our interventionists and half of our counselors for next year, but there are no other one-time funds to help cover expenditures. So we can, as a district, we continue to monitor what's going on at the state, but we also very closely monitor our own budget and literally every expense that comes through. What'll happen next is, in May, we get the May revise from the governor, and that's what we use to pull together the adopted budget and create what we're going to have for next year, that we bring to the board on June 18th. And so we are recommending a positive certification by the board. Thank you.
I don't know where the term COLA came from, cost of living adjustment. If you think, I can't think of anything that has not gone up over 0.75%. And so it's frightening to hear the cutbacks and to blame it on COLA. I mean, we're looking at salaries of people that are in here that can't afford a COLA of 0.75%. And we as a business to do a business, having owned businesses, if you're in deficit spending, if you don't do cuts, you're going to go out of business. And you may go out of business anyway. And so it's very serious, and we're all going to have to really look at this closely. This was much clearer than before. I didn't like it, but it was you did a beautiful, clear job. But I think the message of deficit spending is very frightening. Thank you.
Yeah, I echo that. I think it was a very clear presentation and leaves us with a lot to consider and be thoughtful of as we continue to move forward as a district. But I thought you did an excellent job explaining the numbers and how the chips are falling right now. Thank you.
Yeah, it's quite a sobering multi-year projection.
I don't really have any questions or comments. I agree. It's not good news across the board. I do have one question, just out of pure curiosity, on the unrestricted line items. There's an item for capital outlay of $107, and it's an oddly small and specific number, so I'm just curious what that might be.
Actually, I was curious about that too. So I looked it up, and I don't remember what it was for. It was something that wasn't budgeted, but so a capital outlay is supposed to be either equipment over $5,000 or project building and stuff. So there was something unrelated to building that was coded to that because I guess it was coded wrong and they moved it. So it wasn't like it wasn't budgeted that $107 would sit there. Yeah, no, but I actually was curious, so yeah.
And board, because it is second interim, this is an action item for you tonight.
Move that we approve the second interim report as presented.
Second?
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Diane. 10.5, approval of resolution 2024-10.
Sorry. Remember, we did 10-4 already. We did. So this is a resolution to eliminate.
Microphone.
reduce our-
Mic check,
Microphone.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Board, what we have before you tonight is a resolution to eliminate or reduce the number of classified positions in the district. This is largely site-funded positions that are some intervention aides, a clerk, and some yard duty positions.
I think that's.
Okay, just a quick clarifying
I'm
question.
sorry, I'm sorry, this one is just a .10 on the library.
Yeah, I'm like, throw me off.
And I
Sorry
was
about
wondering, what is point 10
I'm
on the
sorry, I was thinking
library?
last board meeting. I
Is that at
apologize.
one site?
So yeah, what it is that we are reducing Marsh Creek Elementary School because of the reduction of the 5 classrooms moving to Ike Martinez Elementary School. And so to account for that, it is a .10 reduction of the librarian.
Perfect. Okay.
We don't go below 80%, and so that's why it is a .10.
What does point 10 look like?
About 2.5 hours a day.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, if nobody has any other questions, I move that we approve item 10.5, resolution number 2024-10.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Next, board member comment, future agenda items. I went to the CTA school board breakfast last Saturday.
Any updates from that? You want takeaways that would be relevant for us to know?
They talked a little bit about the budget, so
Okay.
it's one of those like not happy reports.
Okay. The only comment I would have is that we saw in Dr. Eaton's presentation, I read a story to first graders. It's part of my story time with Stephanie tour that I'm doing. So I have two schools I will be reading to first graders on Friday. And I want to thank Nicole for getting those set up. And I look forward to visiting the school sites.
I know it's board member comments. Could I add one thing
Yes.
as well? I just wanted to let the board know that tomorrow night we'll be at a special dinner honoring some people that are in this room, including Nicole Clevin, including Lauren Griggs, and also including some other administrators in the district. And so anyway, I wanted to announce that, and it'll be a special night, and we're looking forward to celebrating these wonderful people.
Yeah. Party on. All right. Okay, so the next regular board meeting will be held April 10th, 2024 at 6 p.m.
All right, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, meeting's adjourned at 7:49 p.m.
Well, that was.
Wow. That's a record. Well, next